single system audio. When we're doing single system audio, what are we recording to normally?
The camera.
Yeah, the camera. So, and when you're recording to the camera, if it's recording as a stereo track, how many audio files is it making when you record? For each video file, how many audio files are there? Stereo, so it's one. So that's the way the camera processes the audio. So like the C100s that you guys used record a stereo track. So even though it's called channel 1, it's really the left channel. Channel 2 is the right channel. And that's how it's going to show up in your editing system. So this is where the Canons actually store stuff. Like I always make a folder called footage. And then if I had multiple cameras, I would have labeled it or multiple cards before I drag stuff in. You always want the full file structure of whatever camera you're copying from. It doesn't matter on every camera, but it does on some. And like the sound devices ones, where does that sound report go? Well, it goes into a folder on the memory card. So you want to make sure you copy everything and don't delete the sound report. So don't try to find the files and only copy files when you guys do file management. Copy the whole thing. Where it is stored is under private, AVCHD, BDMV, and then stream. Yeah, stream. Now, the way MTS works, which is the file system these use, is if you had a long recording, like an hour-long recording, it would have multiple clips. Premiere and most editing softwares will string those together for you. But if you take all these clips and just drag and drop them into Premiere, it won't know to do that, and you'll end up with like 5 copies of the same thing, and it will drive you bonkers. So in Premiere, and I know some of you guys have edited before, some haven't, so I'm going to go through this really slowly. We'll start a new project. I always label it something logical, so single system sound, and I always, oops, I just hit the X, single system sound, and I always do the date, starting with the year, then the month, then the day, and my initials. And I resave projects every day I work on them. So whenever I come back to a project, as soon as I open it, I do file save as, and I save it as that date. I do that for a few reasons. 1, I don't trust autosave, and 2, I don't trust me, and 3, for when it gets copied later. So autosave usually works, sometimes it doesn't. So if I need to go back, I can always go back a day to the last time I worked on it. And if I make like a huge change in the middle of the day, I may save it as a second version and do like Rev A or Rev B or put the time afterwards. The I don't trust me is maybe I made a big mistake and did it back so far that autosave files have already been deleted because my autosave is set to like 10 days. But it was, you know, a bunch of versions back I screwed something up and deleted some important files, or I need to go back to reference it. That way I always have it. Then when you're copying to another hard drive, like you're done with your project, you need to copy everything over and archive it. Last modified is not going to show up properly. It's going to show up as the time every file was copied. So it's really tough to figure out what's the newest version. So a lot of us get lazy and just use last modified to find the right version of a file. But then when we move it over, you can't find it. So I went through that a lot looking at the endowed films and trying to figure out what was the newest version because people didn't put dates in the file names. So I didn't know the names of the people who worked on them, right? Because they were before my time and I had nothing to do with the project. So I couldn't go, oh, well, Joseph was the first editor and then Jack was the last editor and they did work in the middle. Like I would not have known that if it was just names, right? So just a tip there for your location. I always go keep all my stuff in the same place, right? So I've been working on this already with other classes, but my footage is there. Premiere, that was the first section. Then this section, I always give Premiere its own unique folder. So this is Premiere section 2. And that's so that when it creates its architecture of file saving, it's all in one folder and not getting mixed up with other Premiere projects. Does that make sense? This will make your life easier if you're not doing this already. We're not going to skip import mode. I don't care about a template. So create the project. So this is already navigated to where things were, but if it wasn't, I'll go over to the hard drive, single system, footage. I know it's in private, and you see now these show up. So with using import mode, if these had been long clips, it would only show me, like say this was actually one roll, but it was just broken up, it would only show me one clip because it will string it all together. So that's why you always want to use import mode, because if you don't know how a camera works and if it saves things that way, or if there's extra metadata attached, it might get mixed if you just drag and drop in. So any questions or horror stories about skipping this process? Have you always used this, or do you often drag and drop in to Premiere?
I always use that.
Okay, so yeah. So hopefully you haven't hit these problems yet. And a lot of cameras, it doesn't matter anymore. It's just some it does. Reds work a lot better with import like this. Canons generally do. And if you're doing short files and you're not using metadata, you may not notice. But when you open up that world of using metadata or going to longer projects, it'll make a difference. And you can tell it to create a new sequence if you want. I'm not going to do that. You could copy media to one place. I like to organize outside of Premiere myself, so I know where everything is. It scares me when it does too much for me. But anyway, there we go, import. All right, so these files, if I just drag and drop this in to create a sequence, it shows up as a stereo file, right, for audio. So if I play this.
Now, let's not clear the noise.
You can really hear that in this room, right, that it's a different mic in each channel because the left and right are far enough apart. The way this looks as an audio track is that it's just in the middle. Left and right are not panned. But you're hearing different audio in left and right. So most people would just edit this as is, and you're just dragging and dropping clips and editing and doing whatever you're going to do to edit without changing this audio. So I'm going to show you a way to make life much easier. We're going to leave a little bit of this. I don't know what Jack is saying right here, but we're just going to pretend like we like that clip. And that was from clip 01. I'll just go to clip 4, and I'm going to do something different on this one. I'm going to right-click on the clip, modify audio channels. Because remember, our clip came in as a stereo file. It's one file with left and right. It's really one file, period, a video file with audio attached, but that's the way the computer is processing and handling the data, is it's a stereo audio file. So we are going to convert it to a mono audio file, and we know there are two channels, left and right. Channel 1 is this left channel. Channel 2 is the right channel. So we're changing the way it interprets that data. So I say, okay, doesn't look like anything's changed, but I drag this over. Now you can see, even though it's labeled left and right on there, they're in two different audio tracks automatically. So what this does for us is if, well, let me play this. Just, I have no idea what he says here. So if I solo this one,
popped peas so
it's
powerful
the
they could not
boom
get
mic,
them
right?
off their feet.
And if I solo this one,
on axis versus off axis.
it's the lav. Now, you can also do things like, I'm going to lock the video. Let's say this was two people having a conversation. This happens a lot in podcasts, right? You have a video track and you're going to end up wanting just the mic on for the person who's speaking. You don't want both mics up all the time. I could use my cut tool, cut a whole bunch of chunks, because let's pretend like that's when different people were talking. Then I'll go back with V to my select tool. If you use Alt, it selects only the track. Even if it's linked, it selects only that chunk of audio. So I can delete that. Alt, delete this one. hold down Alt, click on this one, delete it, Alt, delete it, delete, and now we've got that checkerboard, and it was really fast. But these are both mono tracks, so they're both going to be in your left and right ears. So let's just listen to this. This could be kind of amusing. I'll jump ahead a little. So we hear the lav right now.
Alright. Alright, so we're doing this properly, right?
No
Now it's the boom.
mics, no surprise rustling sounds. Because let me tell you, I've seen things, terrifying things. Like lav mics taped to bare steam. That's a betrayal of trust. See, the lav mic, gentle, discreet, a tiny powerhouse of sound, but place it wrong, and suddenly I sound like I'm broadcasting.
Live from inside a crumpled chip bag. Also, let's talk.
So you see it's going back and forth from those. So you can see can you see how this is easier to manipulate your audio when what you really wanted were two mono channels? So it's a lot easier than if you left it as stereo. And you don't have to do this one clip at a time over in this window. You can select, as long as they're the same source formatting, you can select multiples at a time. So you could dump all your footage in, import it, select them all, and modify this once. So I have these four, and I want to show you what happens to, we already have one of these in the timeline, right? Right click, modify audio channels, and I'm going to change it from stereo to mono and to two clips. Now I'm going to get a warning that source clip in use. Changes to the clip channel format or number of audio clips will not affect clips already in a sequence, but will be applied to the next time this clip is edited into a sequence. Do you want to continue? Yes. And that's because this first clip is already there. See, it's still a stereo file. But I could take this and drop it in, and now it's that dual mono. So I'm going to click save on this. You guys have any questions on this so far? Okay, I'm going to unlock this and just drop this audio file, this video file down so it's in line. All right, so save. Now I want to send this to Audition. So I am going to use sequence and where is it? No, edit, sorry, it's in edit in Adobe Audition, and sequence. This is one of the ways to send stuff to Audition, right? We have three ways. We can do this. We can just open the sequence in Audition from Audition for Premiere, or you could export it as a OMF file and then open it into Audition. So I am going to say, again, I'm going to select where I put it always, and I'll put this as Audition Section 2. And I'll label this dynamic link 2025 0318 AZ. I'm going to send the entire sequence, send the video. I can send it through dynamic link, or I can export a preview video. I'll just leave it dynamic link. Then audio handles, that's how much you can change on each side. So it is actually going to be copying everything over to Audition. You can't go back and forth, back and forth. It's not a dynamic thing, even though it's called dynamic link. It just sends it to Audition, then you have to send it back. So I'm going to give it 10-second audio handles, and I'll transfer settings. So if I had already done some work in Premiere, it'll move those settings over. Okay, so, and say okay, and it's going to open it into Audition. And this would look the same if I opened it from Audition, opening the Premiere file. Okay. So we can see in the beginning, well, we've got our video file, right? That'll show up on preview, and it's created one video file for that whole sequence. But these are still a left and right audio file. It's a.
That thing will betray you at the worst possible moment.
You can see it on the audio channels, right? But over here, now we have these mono files.
Discrete.
And even here where we have both, which is why you want to leave both there for your post sound mixer, even if you know like this lav, the lav is unusable. It was too loud on the camera and it clipped on the camera. This is one of the other reasons I don't like single system audio, because cameras clip so easily. So I did notice this already, and you can really see it visually. Let me double click on this one so you can see it. The levels clipped. Even though this is low, the camera actually needed to be set a little bit lower because it's not clipping at 0 decibels, just that camera was incapable of recording that much volume. So this is why you do tests too, because the safest way to tell, I told you guys a level, you probably followed it. I was wrong. That camera couldn't handle as high a level as I told you it could have. So you really need to be at like 60% on that camera for it to not clip, because it should have handled this just fine, but it's clearly clipped because you can tell it's clipped when, you know, there should have been small peaks and it's kind of flat at the tops and bottoms. Because this camera recorded 16-bit audio, it doesn't have as much dynamic range. I forgot it was only a 16-bit audio recorder. I thought it was 24. It would have been able to handle more levels. Does that make sense? Because our bit depth translates into how much volume it can record before it clips. So back over to the multi-track. All right, this is an annoying thing in Audition. If you have done this accidentally, the way you have to fix it, for every file you want to change, and I have spent hours searching for a different workaround. If anyone finds one, please tell me. If it's already in your multi-track, you've got to find it over in your file browser. So this is O2 extracted. And then you have to right click on it and extract channels to mono files. And now it's extracted left and right, but then you have to go back to your multi-track and manually drop these in. And you notice this is a different length, right? Anybody have an idea why that is? Why, like, this was that clip, and why are these longer? What did we tell Premiere to send it to Adobe Audition with? What length handles did we say? So it's an extra 10 seconds at the beginning and the end. Now this is not in line. You'll have to manually sync it up. That gets really annoying really quickly, because we'd have to take 10 seconds off the beginning and slide it back in order to have these as dual mono. There are other things you can do with the clips. If you know, yeah, I'm not using that lav at all, you can take the clip and so I could go over in the waveform view, clip, its effects. Gotta remember where it is. Yeah, where is it? There is an effect where you can fill one side with the other. That was under... Or under favorites. I don't know why it's under effects. It's under favorites. Actually, no, that won't do it. Convert to mono would actually combine these two signals. You don't want to do this because now it has mixed.
Things will betray you at the worst possible.
The two, and you can't take them apart. In Premiere, it's easier actually because it's just an effect to fill left with right or fill right with left. But the way you save this from being really annoying is in Premiere, you just go ahead and switch to mono channels. I wanted to really spend some time on this because I've seen a lot of student projects that didn't do this, and they did record single system, or they recorded on the Zoom recorder with the Zoom recorder set to do stereo because they thought it was easier to only have one track and have left and right instead of doing dual mono recordings. And so then I see a lot of projects come all the way through the pipeline to to being finished projects where I can tell when I am listening to it, they've left boom up on one channel and lav on the other, or it's just bouncing around and your person speaking is only out of one channel, which is bad sound mixing, especially if you didn't intend for it to be that way. And it's not like, oh, this is somebody off way in the distance on the left, so I put it in the left channel. But it was just because they didn't know how to do this process. And they didn't know how to fix it. So you can fix it later. I will say for other softwares, this is easy, because if somebody did this, when you go to export a file to go to a sound mixer, OMFs, you can't do this, but in an AAF, which is just another format, this breakout to mono, enable it, and it just breaks every track out to mono. And it's really easy. It's annoying that you have to, if there was music or stereo sound effects, you then have to convert them back to stereo, but it's very easy to do that in other softwares. You can just pan left and right. But that would export a file to a sound mixer where it didn't matter if you didn't split out stereo files to dual mono. They would still have the data, easy to use. It's just an annoying thing. Next week, I'll show you guys dealing with audio from the mix pre, because it's a lot easier if it's already multi-channel mono, and how to like put that into, like, I'll just tell you guys this is really simple. In Audition, if you are adding a file to your multi-track, so say you have over here your multi-track audio recording from the mix pre, which has like your left and right channels and then your boom mic and then like 2 lavs. That's the normal configuration. And you want it to drop in as multiple single tracks. When you drag over, oh, that's already a mono file. Where's O2? See, it defaults to dropping in like this. When it is a multi-channel mono, it's not doing it now, but if you hold down Alt as you drag it in, it will ask you if you want to drop it into 2 mono channels, and then you can just say yes, and it drops it in. But because this is a stereo file, it's not giving me that option. That's why when you're doing sound recording, it's so much easier to record a multi-channel mono file. I know that's a lot of information. Does that make sense? Tried to go slowly-ish with this because it's a lot to process. You guys have any questions? Hopefully this will save you guys future pain and suffering to, if you do record single system, which you will in your life, you will. Just convert the channels before you start editing. Even if you're staying totally in Premiere, it just makes it easier if you're not having to do the fill options. What I would have done in here, if I'm staying in Premiere, so I've got this clip, I could go to the audio clip mixer. Sorry, I would have to go to the audio effects. I'm just going to do this in the audio track mixer, because usually when I'm doing fast edits where I'm not doing external audio, it's stuff like training videos for you guys, right? Or quick interview packages. So I can add an effect, and that, I believe it's under special, swap channels, or fill left with right. So in this case, the boom mic was what was good, and I know I'm throwing away the lav because it was clipped. So I can say fill right with left.
Portray it the worst possible.
And there it is. It's just the boom mic. And now I can add other effects. If I wanted to do that directly to the clip, double click on the clip, effects controls, and then I could find that effect. So fill left with right, and that's why I could have applied it to just the clip and drag it on the clip. So, you know, that's done twice now, but those are the 2 ways you could apply it in Premiere. That's why I know where it is natively in Premiere, because when I do this and mess this up, it's usually because it was an interview and I was sending sound straight to the camera, and it was a left and right recording. And so that's the quick fix, because usually on an interview, I really do use the same mic the whole time. I just put both up, put a lav on somebody and a boom just in case. And that's where I often will use this, but then I don't go to Audition to do sound mixes on quick interview packages. Everything in Premiere is fine. And we'll go over later in the semester some of those tools. So there's a little bit on single system sound for you guys and how to deal with those files coming out of the C100 or any camera or the Zoom H4Es if you set them to stereo recording. Cool? All right. Let me stop this recording